This entry was for Palm Beach in 2025. The name of the show was Flight of Fancy, and I was to make a charm necklace. I thought that would be fun to do. They wanted us to create a charm necklace, and the class title was A Charmed Odyssey. So I started with going on the internet and looking at different charms that I could use, different types of charms out there right now. So I kind of concentrated on certain shapes that I thought would be fun. I used a lot of hearts. I did flowers, butterflies, and hummingbirds as the theme because two things, Flight of Fancy, and also I just love them. Who in the garden doesn't love a hummingbird that flies by? I started by putting shapes together that would replicate what I was trying to create to see if I liked the design. So I had a whole bunch of ideas, and I started with the base of most of these charms were from a gourd that I had bought on Etsy. These are these little bottleneck gourds or egg gourds, really small ones, and they have a sort of a curve to them so you don't have to, a charm shouldn't really lay flat necessarily. These shapes that I was attracted to, I would print them out and I'd glue them onto the gourd, and then I would cut them out. First with an X-Acto knife because it's easier to get to it, but then I use this jeweler's saw that you can buy, and I have this bracket that you put onto your counter when you're cutting so that you're not going to cut into the counters. It's a really nice addition if you're going to be using a jeweler's saw. And you can go on my website. There's some links on there that tell you which ones I like. So I start by cutting out all these shapes. You can see on my counter here I had tons of shapes that I just wanted to choose from in the end. Some of them are a little fragile. You can see they're curved here. So what I did was flip them upside down and put some epoxy in the middle just so that they would be stable and strong when I'm working with them. I would put some of these on skewers while they dry so that I could work with them like these little butterflies here. So I'm going to go through each charm. I know this is going to be long, but you can fast forward if you don't want to watch everything. But I have two types of drills. I have a Dremel drill that you hold, and then I have this thing called a flex shaft system, which is called a Fordham is the brand. And boy, do I love this tool. It's kind of expensive. I don't recommend it if you're not going to get into this, but you hold the drill with your hand and you have a pedal on the ground so that you can push it and get it to spin so that you don't have to, it's not on all the time. It's a little bit more precise. So after I cut these charms out, as you can see here, I followed a pattern on this charm, and I dug out the section that I wanted out to create this little flower shape. Here it is without any paint on it. I drill a hole in the middle to receive the eucalyptus pod, then I fill it with a little bit of polish that has glitter so that it gives you a diamond look. And it's a really pretty charm right here. It's all set. The next charm I did was just this circular gourd that I made. I cut out a circle, and then I took rattan and made another circle on top of it. I made it pearlized. One of the things I like about charm bracelets are all the different tones, and I used a lot of different color, silver, gold, bronze, you name it, but I liked bringing in some color. So this way I put a stone in the middle that's a foxnut and put the rattan around it and then paint the outside as if it was pearlized, and it's done. Next I took another material that I like to use are mushrooms. These are the hard mushrooms you can get on trees outside. And you dry them, you make sure they're completely dry, and then you sand them down to a shape that you want, or a thickness, if you will, and then I put a pattern on it. You can see the pattern there. And I followed the pattern by cutting it out in a circle like this, and then drew out more circles I dug out the circles with that Fordham drill so that I have all these different shapes in here. It's kind of hard to tell. One of the things you must do when you're using something like a mushroom is that it will absorb moisture, so you need to stop that. If you put moisture on it, such as spray paint, then when you go back to it, it might have absorbed the moisture and enlarged and changed its shape. So you really have to seal it with something. I use a crazy glue with a brush here, and I just put it on there and let it dry, and then when you're done, it will seal it. It won't bring any moisture back. So here it is painted. One of the things I found with this is that I paint different colors of, two tones, like a dual tonality for silver, gold, and whatnot on this one. The next charm was kind of fun. It was a larger charm. It's a heart, and it was curved. As I said, with these gourds, they are a little curved. But I wanted it to look a little like hammered metal, so I took a drill. This one I did use the Dremel, different drill bits that give you different shapes. So you can do a circle or a V, whatever you want to be able to receive pieces, or if it's just a look you want. So here it is all drilled and ready to go. And then to put the hook on there, I measured. You can see the pink pen there I used to just sort of know where to drill the hole, and then it becomes its own little clasp there. Not clasp, but a hook, so you can dangle it here. And there it is on the necklace. The next one, this is the largest charm that I did. I wanted something big just to change the shapes. So here's that drill again with the Dremel. You can buy a drill press separately, and I do recommend it. These aren't that expensive, but they're very valuable because it's hands-free, and it really makes a difference. And so you can put these things. Here's an example of a drill bit that I use that has sort of a V, makes a V-shaped receptacle, so that then I can put eucalyptus, which is also shaped the same way, and glue it right in there so that it's really nice and secure. And when it's all said and done, here it is painted. Again, the thing that looks sort of like an opal is a foxnut. The eucalyptus, and then the gourd is all around. The whole base is the gourd. This next charm was kind of fun because when you look at some of your plant material, you can see that it's very textural, as is this. And these are called canela berries. They have a lot of texture, and you can get these on the internet. They're very thin, so you do need to, once you cut it open, fill the backside inside with epoxy or something solid so that it has structural integrity. And because it has such great texture, and I didn't want to change that, I spray painted the whole thing a darker color, and then I used this rub and buff that you can get, which is a wax type of paint. You dab a little bit on your finger, and it really just rub it on. I used sort of a bronzy color so that you can see the dark color that is underneath. You rub the color on top, and it sort of brings out the texture and the piece that you're working with. I love to use these. One of the other things I like to use here, this is Bugbane. Two different names for the same plant. But the little seed pods in the fall, when they bloom, look to me like a bird, if you can see here. They're very fragile. I don't breathe on it too hard, it'll blow apart. So I do put an epoxy over it just to ensure that it doesn't break apart. And I just took acorns, the tops of an acorn, and used these as birds on a little tiny branch that I put on there, and you paint them. And here's what it looked like on the charm. So as you can see, it's an acorn top, and then around the different beads around it are identified here. Here's another bird. I did two of these. This one is on a gourd shaped like a heart that I had painted gold, and then you put the bird on top with little wings on it. And a lot of pieces went into that. I like to put these together when I send a piece to help, because I'm not there in person. I will put together a piece like this for the passers so they can identify each plant material, because it gets a little confusing when you have a piece like this and so much plant material. So here's that shape at the beginning that you saw. I love this. It kind of looks like a clover. I'm not quite sure what the shape is, like a flower. I cut it out of the gourd and drilled a hole, as I did with the Dremel drill with the other pieces, to receive this eucalyptus. Just painted it, and then the eucalyptus is in the middle with some nail polish in it. To edge this in paint, you can get these really nice nail polishes nowadays. They're called chrome nail polishes. Unfortunately, you do need a UV light because that's how they cure. But it's really, you can use a tiny paintbrush, you can get a nail brush, and as you can see on this flower, I edged it so that it would really give it some accent there for this piece. I just really love that. And they're fun to work with. I love one of the biggest things I tell people is experiment. You never know until you try something, whether or not it's going to work or whether or not you like it. I really do like to experiment with paints and nail polishes and whatnot. So this next piece, it starts with an acorn top that was kind of on the deep side so that it had a reservoir underneath. I filled it completely with epoxy to keep the structural integrity again. And then what I did was I took that Dremel drill again and I drilled tiny little holes into the acorn top so that they would receive plant material. And then I drilled a very big hole in the top. Now you can see the epoxy here coming through because I went right through the shell of the top of the acorn. There's no problem doing this because you're not going to see that you're not going to see that epoxy because the stone will take that place. So you don't have to worry about that if you go through your shell. But here it is all finished with mustard seeds as those tiny little pearls in those holes, and then so the soybeans in the middle, and it just completely covers up that epoxy. You don't have to worry about that. So going back to these butterflies, I start with the gourd as the base, and I cut them out. I like that they're sort of curved because of the shape of the gourd, and I followed the pattern. I had a few different butterflies because that's part of what this is all about, the flight of fancy and whatnot. And I used that type of drill, the Fordham, to handheld piece to sort of layer the different size so that the bottom wings are deeper than the top. It's all one piece, but it appears to be two different pieces there, but it is all just one piece. And then I accentuated the body with, mustard seeds and gave it some antennae and whatnot. And that's just on top of an acorn top again. There it is together. So it has Old Man Palm, which is the antennae, and that stuff's great because it's not too brittle and you can use it and it won't break as much as some things that are very fragile at that, in that diameter. And then the acorn top, raffia is what I use for the different links to connect it to the necklace. So here's another butterfly. Again, this is a better example. You can sort of see the different depths to this piece so that when you sand down the lower wings, it gives you sort of a depth there. It was surprising. Sometimes you walk into something you don't even know you did until later. When I painted it, the texture changed. So you can see those bottom two wings are a little rougher than the top, and I really liked that. This is also a really good example of using that paint, the nail polish paint that's the chrome, to edge the butterfly so that you have some sort of decorative edging there on the border of the wings. Then you put together the butterfly body I used fennel as the body and a little tiny mustard seed as the head, and once again that Old Man Palm for the antennae. So here's another butterfly. I wanted to change the directions of the butterflies so that it all worked out. So I wanted one going this way, hanging on the wing itself. So I created this with the gourd, but I used the old man palm for not only the antennae, but also the striations in the wings there, just so that, judges want you to create texture with plant material and lines with plant material versus just painting lines. I think they like you to go the extra mile there. And you can see the mustard seeds. I differentiated the size. The head is a little bigger than the body, and I put it all together there. And then you can paint it. It really shines then with these stripes. I love that. So the next one was another butterfly. You can kind of get the idea that I liked using these cords for the butterfly. I had just done a necklace, or a bracelet that I had a lot of butterflies, so I had quite a few butterflies left over. So it was fun to just sort of tap into an old piece and grab some of that. This little butterfly just went on its own on top of a charm that was created by cutting out a gourd in a heart shape and then just putting the butterfly right on top of it. This heart was fun because one of the gourds I had was on the thicker side and really had some curvature, and I thought this would be fun to create this puffy heart. So at the end of this one strand of charms, I love this little heart. It's all by itself, just a gourd and raffia as the link to the rest of the necklace. But it gives you this real puffy gold look, and I really liked that. So for this one, I used an acorn top, put a little of the epoxy in the center there so that it would stabilize it, and then I put a crepe myrtle and then a soybean as the pearl, and that's all you need. The thing about this one that really made it pop was I changed the color. I made the base underneath that crepe myrtle one type of gold, and then the edge another type of gold, and it really sort of made it pop, which is fun. So one of the things you can't tell from looking at these charms is how they are connected. So you can see here, this is the back side of one of our charms here. And I drill a hole to put the link in it for the charm itself to hang on the necklace. But then you can see underneath, I put one there to be able to hook up a charm for below it. And you can see how it's been done there with the epoxy. And that's very stable. That's not going to pull out or anything. This, if I want something to really stay in place, I usually put epoxy there because it's the strongest thing I've found. The epoxy that I use is called Art Resin. It's a 2-part epoxy. You can get it on Amazon. And it is great to use because it's no odor. It's very low odor. There's not much scent to it whatsoever. It's also food safe. So when handling some of these things, you just want to make sure you're not using something too toxic. I find it to be very, very easy to use. So now that I have all these charms sort of put together, I started to lay them out to see how they were going to work together. This is just at the very, very beginning of layout. And then I had a necklace, a chain that I thought I was going to use because I liked it. And I hadn't shown it yet, so it was ready to roll. But I didn't like the way it looked with the charms. It just didn't give me the look I wanted, and I can't put my finger on it, but I went back to the drawing board and realized I wanted a little more contemporary look to the necklace itself. So here they all are, laying out here. And I came up with an idea that I'll tell you about later. But when I looked at it in this stage, I realized if you look at the way these are all laid out, you could draw a line across it, and you can see that they're all kind of falling to the same level. And I didn't think that would be good. So I added a few things. You can sort of see I moved some of the charms around, added some length to them, added some beads so that they weren't all flush at the same level. You'll see in a little bit, there's another example of that. For the necklace itself, I used Norfolk Island pine needles, which are fabulous. If you can find these are so much fun to play with. They grow in Florida, Hawaii, and more southern states, and real tall pine tree that gives you these needles that fall off, and you can get them at the base of the tree. You can soak them in water, and then they're much more pliable. They'll dry in the shape you want. So here I have the shape that I wanted. I printed out, and then I put wax paper over the print, and I used skewers to secure these Norfolk Island pine needles to let them to dry in that shape. Once they are dry, you want to keep them in that shape. So I use this crazy glue with the brush that I had talked about earlier. And I get in there and I really, this is kind of out of focus, but I just want to give you an idea that I really get in there with this because I don't want it to fall apart. It can break very easily, these pine needles. They're big, but they do break apart. And this will help ensure that it will stay together and seal it and everything like that. To get the links to hold the charms, I knew I needed something that was hollow and chunky. So I found some non-invasive bamboo on the internet, and I bought some. See how these are, they come like this. They're circled, they're hollow in the middle, they're hard on the outside. And I use this little chopping tool. It's a little chop saw, cut-off saw. And I marked the piece, the bamboo, where I wanted to cut it. And I didn't want them all the same length. I wanted them kind of variation. I didn't want them the same texture. You can see I chop them all. They come in these little nubbins. And this is a good picture of how you can see the different textures depending on which part of the bamboo I'm cutting. And I painted them different colors so they wouldn't all be gold. It was, like I said, lots of different colors involved here. And you can see it here. And it just helped because I can secure these with raffia as the middle. I used twisted raffia as the string, if you will. And each of these charms were then hooked up to this bamboo. And again, I laid it out. I realized, I needed a little more length. See this charm on the right that has the flower engraved in it? I wanted that a little longer, so I put some beads between the butterfly and that charm just to lengthen it, and I did that with a few different areas here. So here it is laid out with the bamboo, and I put it in section, I put everything together, and I put it on the mannequin that I was given for this particular piece. And then I realized I don't think I like the way it's hanging. I think that the two charms on the outside there's space under there that I didn't like. So I rearranged them. You can see this is here. Instead of having one charm on the outside, I did two. And that way it kind of gives you this V shape, and it sort of fell in line a little bit better. So here it is all together. I really enjoyed making this because I do like to make different charms and different textures, and you can embellish some of these charms with your own plant material. You can carve them, you can have them as is, and it just really can create this lovely piece. I enjoyed making this. It did well. I got first place and best in show. And the statement of intent, we were required to do that. I just sort of tied in the title of the show with the title of the class with what I did. So there is no fanciful flight quite like the odyssey of a beloved butterfly or hummingbird. These beautiful pollinators bring such joy to our gardens. I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it. Thank you.